one down change, two down change. While driving in that manner, you're not wearing out your gearbox and your clutch and your flywheel. Did you know that every time somebody subscribes, I'm forced to do a second gear pull? Three things you don't understand about driving manual. The first thing that nobody seems to mention when talking about driving manual is to understand the minimum speed in every gear. The engine's struggling at 5, but at 6 it's happy. So 6 miles an hour is the minimum speed for this car. We're going to figure out the speed in second gear. So 12's fine, 11's fine. 10 is just about starting to struggle. So now we know. First, we can do 6. Second, we can do 11. Yeah, you can hear the engine starting to struggle. So 15 is the minimum for third. Let's figure out fourth. 23 is iffy. 24 is comfortable. Okay, we don't really need to figure out fifth and sixth because they're generally quite long gears. But if you've got a car with a smaller engine and shorter gears, you want to probably figure out fifth as well. Now, why is this important? I'm coming into this roundabout, but the reason I knew I needed second is because I did not dip below 11 miles an hour. It's so useful to understand the minimum speed in each gear. I've got to go over this speed bump. I know I can do it in third because I'm not going under 15 miles an hour. Now, there's a really nasty speed bump here. This one's really stiff, and I know I need to drop down to second because I've got to go over it at about 11 miles an hour. I never hear people talking about this, and it's such a fundamental of being able to drive a manual really well. Now, we will be driving much faster later in this video, but we're going to get through the everyday stuff first. So why is this useful? Well, it's so good because it helps you make educated decisions about which gear to select. One of the things that people really struggle with when it comes to driving a manual is just knowing what gear to be in. But if you know the minimum speed for every gear, then you automatically know what gear you can select. Now, be very careful. Every car is different, so do not take the numbers I've given you in this car and use them in your car. They're going to be very different. M2's got very, very long gears. This is also really good for fuel economy. I happen to know that the minimum speed for fifth in this car is about 27. So I can cruise down here at 30, 33, and use fifth, which is going to give me better fuel economy. Now, I'm in an M2. Why the hell am I talking about fuel economy, right? But there's a reason that I actually managed to get reasonable fuel economy out of this car, because I understand these things and I drive around the gearing in the car. If you've got a car that's more fuel efficient than this thing, which is 99% of cars, you'll do even better. But there's a reason why, since the start of me owning this car, I'm averaging 26 miles to the gallon. That's not normal for a manual 500 odd horsepower sports car. But it's imperative to understand that minimum speed, because at all times when you're driving a manual, you have to make a decision about what gear you're going to use. So if you're new around here, especially if it isn't your first video, maybe consider subscribing. Now the stuff everyone came for. Rev Matching and Heel&Toe. This car has a rev matching feature that will do this all for me, but for the purposes of this video I've disabled it. So we're going to go for a little spirited drive and we're going to have a chat about rev matching and Heel&Toe. It is imperative, especially for fast driving, but to be honest I use it in everyday driving, to Heel&Toe and especially to rev match. We're going to come up to a corner and we're going to want to drop a gear, so we have to match the revs. I'm going to get onto this a little bit later in this video, but the whole point of driving a manual car, at all times you have to be thinking about protecting the drivetrain. So when you're driving quickly, the drivetrain is under more stress. If you've got a lot of revs on and you're changing gear without Heel&Toe, you are going to decimate your clutch and flywheel and gearbox, to be honest. Heel&Toe is the ultimate expression of this. But the first step is just to learn how to rev match. Once you've got the rev matching down, Heel&Toe is much easier to learn. So what you can do if you're a beginner, and I'll demonstrate this for you, is you can separate the two actions. So you can get your gear changes done first, and then you can brake. It's a little bit easier on your feet. I'll show you. You're coming up to the corner, you see the corner, you drop the gear first, and then you get on the brakes, and then you get around the corner in the correct gear. If you don't do this, so say for example you're in fourth, and you don't yet know how to rev match or heel-and-toe, and you just brake into the corner, and you go around, and you just hold the same gear, suddenly you're out of the power band. You don't have the responsiveness from the engine that you might want. So what you really want to do is, as you're coming into a corner, rev match once, rev match a second time, and then you can get on the brakes. This is a lot slower, and you got to be more sensible. You can't go 10 tenths, or to be honest, even 7 tenths with this strategy. But this is how I learned, and there's nothing wrong with admitting the fact that you are learning. I use rev matching even on a daily basis. I mean, again, this car will do it for you, so most of the time I just leave it on and let it do it for me. But it is incredibly satisfying when you drop a gear before a corner and then just rock it out. Perfect example, corner, down one gear, down another gear. Now we've got the perfect gear to get out of here. I'm a poet and I didn't even know it. I'm going to do a block change this time, all the way down to third. Big old rev match from 6th to 3rd is very enjoyable, if you can get it right, which is easier said than done. Should have had a rev match there. That's the difference. Now I'm bogging out of third gear. If I had second there, I would have rocketed out of that corner. Would have been so much better. That is why you rev match. Now look, it takes a minute to get good at. Not all of my rev matches were perfect in those clips, but it's something you work at. That's kind of the beauty of a manual. There's just more interaction with the car. There's more to do. There's more fun to be had. Now the third and final point is that your job when you're driving a manual is to protect your drivetrain. That should be your first, primary, and most of the time only consideration for how you drive. What you've got to understand, and without trying to give an engineering lesson, what you're doing when you operate the clutch pedal is you're operating two big spinning metal discs, and when they're spinning at different speeds and you mash them together, you're going to cause wear. Now, wear is inevitable. You can't stop it, but don't be the type of person that's going to be replacing a clutch every 30 to 50,000 miles. This equipment can last 100, 200,000 miles without a problem if you treat it in the right way. But if you don't, you're going to get 1/10 of that. And it's all down to how you drive. It's down to your mechanical sympathy. Every time you come on or off the clutch pedal and you feel an impact in your body, those two metal spinning discs, one is a clutch and one is a flywheel, they're coming into contact at different speeds and they're wearing each other. That's what causes that feeling. If every time you're changing gear, you're being thrown forwards or backwards, that's not a good sign. It means you're doing something wrong. And it means you're harming your drivetrain and wearing it out faster than it should be worn. Now, there are times where you have to be a bit aggressive. If you're driving a bit quickly, if you're on a track day, if it's 2 a.m. and you want to go sideways around this, there are times where you will choose to be rough on the drivetrain, but that should never be the default. And it should never be by accident. It shouldn't just be because that's the way you drive. So be very conscious. If you've got a passenger and at every gear change, at every clutch engagement, they're being thrown backwards and forwards, you've got a problem. My name's Mick. I drive cars. Peace.